Why is finishing music harder than making it? Hi, I'm Zach. I'm an independent artist, guitar player, overall musician, and I'm here to talk about all things music, making music, listening to music. So if that's what you're into, then I'd gladly appreciate if you stuck around and joined along the journey. Today I'm thinking about why is finishing music harder than starting it, and this came up talking about other musicians that I'm friends with and connected to that were talking about AI in music and how it can help take you from point A to point B and help kind of flesh out some of the ideas that you have and using it as a tool. And I'm not pro AI. I understand why people do it and where it helps them, and I think if they use it as a demo to kind of help them flesh out the final idea, then I can kind of see where they might use it. I personally don't, and don't really plan to, because I think my creative process just works a little bit different. I really enjoy making the music and being involved in all the different elements, and I just feel like writing a prompt to me would be more frustrating than just sitting with the song and listening to it over and over again and trying to kind of figure out what element would support and complement it the best and make it better. But I think why it's so easy to start and not finish is because we have the initial spark of inspiration, and then all those ideas that are right at the forefront of your mind are used, and then we've extended where our mind is. And then a lot of times with creativity, I feel like when the going gets tough is when we stop feeling inspired and we get down on ourselves. But I think the bigger issue is we have this like commercialized approach to creativity, and I think that kills creativity more than anything. And that's why I think the AI in music is so prevalent for people, is because they have this initial idea and then they get frustrated that they can't just finish that idea right when they start working on it. Well, with this album, Silence or Solitude, like those are beats that are, some of those are years old and some of them are newer. But the thing that I've realized with myself and my own creative process is that I always have some kind of inspiration or start, and then I start it, and then I might not have ideas anymore, and then I'm like, I don't know where to take this, I don't know where to go with it. But I don't view that as a bad thing. And my own approach is, once I've done that, I have no problem keeping that in a folder, saving it, and then starting something new, and then going, okay, now I feel inspired for this or want to go over here and then work on that. I don't have an issue doing that, and I don't feel like it has to be done. I don't have any corporation or thing that is saying, hey, this has to be done. There's no deadline. And I think as artists, we should have some sort of deadlines for ourselves. Like as I started to get all the music for this album together, I did want it out by the end of the year, at the end of December at the latest, and really push myself to finish. But the music and the arranging and the composing was basically already done. The only thing that wasn't done was the final mixing and the final mastering and all of the stuff that is just finishing the song. It isn't the creative, I mean, there's creative stuff that goes in mixing and I guess some of mastering, but like the actual arranging and the composing of the music was already done. The writing parts was done. So I don't feel like there's a need to put this pressure on it. So when it's going to be done, it's going to be done. And if it doesn't get done in years, then so be it. You'll get something done. And I think that's why it's so hard to finish, is because we start something and we feel all this inspiration right out of the gate and we're ready to go. And then it starts to get a little bit more straining on the mind, and then you don't know where to take it. You want it to be perfect and the best that it can be. There's just all this pressure that's added on, and then we don't know where to take it because now it's not going as quickly as it started, because it probably started by you're playing your guitar or you hear a sample that inspires you or something, and then you have all these initial ideas and you get it going, and then all of a sudden the main theme of the song is there, and then you're wondering, okay, now how do I get this to sound how I want it to sound? You're now out of ideas, you've extended it. And that's where I think a lot of people are starting to use the AI, is to help them get through those breakthroughs. I just don't see the need. I think if we don't have the ideas to get us from point A to Z, then it isn't a bad thing, and maybe that piece that you're working on just isn't meant to be finished right now. Sometimes you might need more life experience, more understanding and knowledge of your skills and and you just need to get through, I think, maybe more life or time away from whatever that thing is to get you to finish it. And that's just been my philosophy on it, is to where I would never have made any of the songs when I first made the beats. I wouldn't have made any of the songs the way that they became. Now looking back, I'm so much happier than what they became because it feels more real and honest, and it attaches to some kind of emotion or thing I was feeling, and it kind of encompasses those years together, and it's just something I can be happy and proud of, whether it becomes anything or not. And I just think it's the pressure that we put on ourselves, that we feel like it has to be done, or we started it so we have to finish it. It's not building a house or, doing road construction, to where, yeah, we're building something and we're making something, and if we start something we should finish it. But I don't think if you put something aside and then you might not go back to it for years, I don't see that as a bad thing, because that pressure just doesn't need to exist. And I think when you let go of that pressure, something's going to get done and finished. And I think you might just be working on an idea that seems to be coming together a lot quicker. And it's always the things that come so quick originally that seem to take longer to finish, versus when you're just messing around and you start something and you don't know where you're going with it, but then you keep going and keep going, and now you basically have a done song. It seems that happens a lot. And I'm working on a new album, I guess, since I've released The Silence or Solitude, and I'm already noticing that, like, there's certain songs that I have this idea for, and I'm like, man, like, I can have this thing done, and all the ideas are there, but then I start working on it. I write the initial guitar part for the main sections, get a drum beat, and then create a bass groove over it, and then I don't really know where to take it. I'm like, well, where should the bridge section go, or the chorus, or what chord changes should happen through it? And then now I'm like stumped. So then I start something new and then mess around with it, and then all of a sudden that thing is getting done so much quicker. So I don't know, it's not worth the pressure, because when you're a creative, you do always have ideas. And in the imposter syndrome video, I talk about how we have these antennas, and something my brother talks about, Santana, Rick Rubin in The Creative Act, which I think is a great book. I know there's a lot of creatives that dismiss that book, but I think they're probably just looking too deep into it. I think there's a lot that you can get out of that just by having more of a holistic approach to your creativity, and not having this pressure and treating it like it's this thing that has to happen. And I think our influences play such a role in creating, and God, I think just having this almost more of like a spiritual approach to creating, and not to sound like a hippie about it, but it just feels like we need to be a little bit more relaxed about it, and in tune with how we're feeling, what we're inspired by, and all these different things that make it all come together in a really natural way. And I think a lot of the music that we don't love and appreciate is a lot of times some of that music that you can almost feel that it was rushed, or they got too formulaic with it. At least that's for me. Some people really like formulaic music, and just kind of, some of the pop songs that sound very familiar, and something that their ear can guess where the chord is going or where something is happening. And I just feel like making it, we're diligent creating, and we know we're putting in the work, we're learning what we need to learn, we know where our strengths are, our weaknesses, and we just stay diligent and disciplined in the craft by getting better and continuing to create, then something will come, and then going back to some of those old things. And I think finishing it becomes less difficult if you just go back to those things that you've taken a month, 6 months, or a few years off of, and then refinishing it. And I think a lot of my mindset came with that as I've been into filmmaking, and learning how many filmmakers and screenwriters have started projects and then they didn't have anything for, or it was a screenplay that they were working on for years on end, and then it becomes what it becomes. Like Paul Thomas Anderson, his latest movie is one that he had originally started planning for like 20 years ago or something like that. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood by Quentin Tarantino, that is another one that he had, I think, the foundations of it years and years ago. So sometimes I think we just need to let the idea form itself while not being so close to it. And then when you take a step away from it, work on new things, get that finished, then you can go back to all of those things that you feel like you were not getting through on, or the ones that you felt like you weren't reaching that breakthrough. Then you can go back and finish it. So on this album, one of the songs that I almost didn't use or didn't go with, or where I was having difficulty finishing, was the song Ray's Theme, the very last track of the album, the 9th song on the album. And I wanted there to be 9. I was adamant about 9 because 9 and 29 are my 2 favorite numbers. I played hockey growing up. When I was a skater, I played with the number 9, and whenever I played goalie, I was the number 29. So I wanted there to be 9 tunes, and I was just really hard on that rule. So I was going through all of my old beats, and I found one of my old ones that had like this lo-fi type of vibe to it. And at first, I didn't think it fit the album at all with the rest of the vibe of everything. And I just decided to start working on it, and then going back to it after all of this time, there was still some difficulty. And then at that point, I was sure that I wanted to use this song, and I'm like, I have to finish this. And I started doing guitar parts over it, and I had this guitar rhythm section that you kind of hear in it where it just plays kind of some chords. Then there's some kind of riffs and runs that happen in some of the different sections. But then for the bulk, where in like the other songs it would normally be like a long guitar solo, which is kind of like how a lot of them are, where you've got the beat and then there's just lead guitar playing over it. That song is the one that is different because there's not like this long guitar section that's playing all these different lead lines over it to where it feels like a long guitar solo. What ended up happening was, in not having this pressure of finishing, but not like having this pressure of thinking of what I felt like it had to be, and it turned out to be probably one of my favorite songs on the album. The original piano melody that I made, and we'll get over this when I do the actual breakdown for it, but the actual piano melody that I made was trying to be more Doors inspired. I love the Doors, and it kind of had this D minor chord progression thing that I thought was cool that I originally made. It's not organ, it doesn't even really sound that much like the Doors when I listen back to it. But that's what's cool, is like you go into things with these inspirations and it turns out to be something different. But that's where my mind was going into it. Anyways, I was working on it and I kept scrapping all of these different guitar runs that I was doing over it, and it just felt forced and it didn't fit the song at all. It has this synth thing that goes on with it. That inspiration came from Summer Madness. I love the song Summer Madness by Kool and the Gang. I was listening to it a lot and I was like, oh, I want to do an ARP kind of synth lead that kind of plays on, but there's no synth solo, but I just wanted to have this synth lead kind of happening in the back. And then it turned out to sound kind of a little Dr. Dre-ish, and which I love him as well, so it worked out. But anyways, so everything was really coming together after all this time of being away from it and coming back to it, but the guitar part. So instead of forcing myself that there has to be a guitar part, I thought back to the original inspiration, which was the Doors. One of my favorite songs of theirs is Light My Fire. The way that Ray Manzarek, so this is where Ray's theme comes from, is Ray Manzarek, the organ player of the Doors, who's one of the best on the keys that I've ever heard. His name is Ray Manzarek, so that's where the title Ray's theme comes from. But the intro to the Light My Fire, or not the intro, but the part in Light My Fire where he enters into that organ solo, is one of my favorite things in the world, and I get literally fired up every time I hear it. So, and I'm not that great at the keys, but I wanted to do something where it kind of had that like build up to it, and I just started messing around on the keys and really found something that I really liked that fit the vibe of what I was going for. So I had the thought that, what if I do a piano or keys solo instead of the guitar, and forcing that, and it's going to be the one song that has that. And I did, and then I fell in love with how it was, and then added a couple more parts and was able to fill in some of the gaps with the guitars parts and the later parts of the song, and it all came together and I felt like it was done and I was super happy with it. So looking back and listening to the album as a whole, it doesn't feel out of place. So I wasn't forcing myself for it to be something that it wasn't supposed to be and being too formulaic about it, saying that, oh, well, all the other songs are basically like this long guitar solo over a beat. Maybe this one's not supposed to be that. And there's enough guitar parts that fit the tone, the actual guitar tone of the other songs, that it doesn't feel out of place. And it still has this beat and this groove, but the way that that song is, I think, has the most interesting parts that the drums are doing, because it can follow the keyboard solo. The sample that plays is originally a chopping of the chord solo. So I don't want to get too into it without, having the actual breakdown that I'll go through. But basically I played a chord progression on the keys, and then when I originally recorded it, I was off time. So I chopped it and just sampled myself. That's where the original key sample comes from. And then for the intro and outro of the song, I just fixed it in time and played it right, and it worked out. So that is just one of those, I think, a good example of kind of what I'm talking about, to where it is easier to finish if you don't put the pressure on of what you think it's supposed to be, and just kind of let it be whatever it's calling to be or what it's supposed to be. And yeah, I could have forced it and then just played some hack guitar solo over the top and been this whole thing, but now I look at that song as being one of my favorites, and I think it challenged me creatively in all the best ways and made me, even just doing that song, I feel like made me a better musician and even music producer for it, because I stepped outside of my comfort zone trying to do a key solo. I think that was the first key solo I had ever done, and it's not the craziest keyboard solo, but it's a very mellow groove that doesn't need this crazy stuff happening in the back, but I feel like it has enough energy to fit the rest of the theme of the album. So I don't know, but it's just not forcing it to be something that it wasn't supposed to be, I think, is the main point of this, to kind of illustrate that finishing a song can be easier, or just as easy as starting the song, if we just go back to it with a fresh mind and an open mind and just kind of let it be whatever it's supposed to be. That's really what I think is how we get from A to Z, finishing whatever we're working on. You keep working on it, but then you go back to it when you feel like you don't have any ideas for it anymore. You start something new, you might finish that. And I've even had seasons of making music where I keep starting all of these new things and none of them are getting finished. And I keep just starting something new and starting something new. I don't get down on myself about that, because I do know, okay, I'll go back to it and then I'll have like a fresh mind, and maybe some of the new things I started working on created new inspirations for those older things. And I notice with art in particular, there's so many times where creation is happening when we're not even thinking about it or doing it, or at least that's how it works for me. When I go back to things, all these ideas are formed. All it takes is me just going back into it. And we don't know if the books we read, movies we watched, life we lived, conversations we've had, music we've listened to, all of that is happening inside of us, and we might not be thinking about whatever thing we're trying to finish, but then when we go back to it, because of all of those things that we've interacted with, we now have like a fresh mind and perspective that helps us finish that thing. So that's kind of what I think makes it easier to the creative process. And I think it goes for all things. I'm not only into music, I love all types of different arts, and I think the same thing happens to me on all creative avenues, is I just don't put pressure on myself to finish anything, and I don't really have a resume to say that my way is the way. But I think getting over the idea that this has to be done right now, today, or I started it so it needs to be done, and constantly each day have to be hacking away at it. I think a lot of the hacking away gets done by not even working on it. I think there are a lot of external factors that are helping shape that idea even when we're not working on it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's kind of I wish I had had a better way of saying all of this that I feel like made more sense, and maybe it does, I'll see when I'm editing, but in my head as I'm talking about it right now, I'm like, geez, I'm all over the place. But in my mind, it makes sense, and not to keep poking at AI, but again, I think that's why I just don't really see a need for it, because I don't feel like that idea has to get out there right then. And if it's 10 years down the road that I finally finish this thing, I'm fine with that, because I have confidence in my creativity that maybe the next thing I'm gonna work on, I'm gonna have more inspiration for. And if I don't, and I keep stacking up things, and then I realize, man, I've got 20 sketches of songs or ideas, and I keep adding to that, then at that point, then I might tell myself, all right, go and listen to those and see if I have anything, and just play it back and hear where I'm at, and then grab the guitar, grab the bass, play on the keys, do something just to see if something helps me get to the next point. And then if it doesn't, go to the next one, go to the next one, go to the next one, go to the next one. And then eventually you get whatever done, but it isn't rushing and putting this pressure on all of these initial ideas. They're coming in so fast, and maybe they're not all congruent, but maybe they are, and you have two separate ideas. And I know with music this is possible, to where they might not fit in the same song, but then that idea might work as the chorus or the bridge or a different section of the song, and they might work together, so you can try it. If they're completely different, or they're even different in genre and feel, then try that. Just keep following that creative GPS, and I think you'll eventually get to whatever destination that you're trying to get to. I don't have really the answers for finishing things in a timely manner or getting them done, but I think that's part of the problem, is we feel that we have to, so we either put out garbage or we need to use all these other tools to get it done faster, and then it's just continuing to saturate the market. I think that there's a problem with saturating the market with things that you're not even proud of. It's one thing to add to this saturated market with art if we feel like we have something to say, but if we're not even happy with it because we're just rushing to get it done, then I don't see the value in that. I don't think that's helpful for really anyone, for you as the artist or for the listener. So I think finishing something, knowing that it'll get done, makes it easier. When you have the confidence that it'll eventually get done, whenever it's supposed to get done, it's gonna get done. And having that confidence helps you finish, I think, whatever it is that you started. And it'll always be that way. Starting something's way easier. You get going on it and you have that initial idea and you feel so inspired, and then when it gets tough, then you start getting down on yourself, and then you get comparison problems, you get the imposter syndrome, you just get every issue mentally that I feel like happens. But if you don't have the pressure, then it kind of relieves that burden. Even just doing that alone might help you get to the breakthrough and not having the pressure. And I think the chase for perfectionism is pointless too. Like, you want it to be the best that it can be. And I know I talked about this in an earlier video too, but I think there's a difference between doing the best you can and perfectionism, and it's such a fine line that, yes, I could record a guitar part a million times, and I do record a lot of takes. Still, it isn't pristine perfect, and I hear errors that I made, but then at a certain point, I realize that it is, and I hate to say good enough, it's not that it's just good enough, but it's appreciating those imperfections for what they are. And I think if it's a pure blatant imperfection, but there might be a flub in the technique when you're picking or doing something, that it might help accent the overall song and make it what it's supposed to be, rather than, I think if you completely make an error, a wrong note, completely out of key, and it's distracting, then that's one thing. But even then, you know, I just don't think that there should be the pressure that there is. And I think that's part of the problem of chasing charts and chasing virality, because we're just making this manufactured art that feels commercialized. And when we treat it too much like a business, then I think that's where finishing things gets so hard. And I know people have that issue just with 9-to-5 jobs or any type of job or a business that they've created is I have this assignment and this has to get done today. So then we have this pressure, but then we realize that like we make music for fun, and there are people that make music for labels, and there is some kind of corporate backing that makes them follow these deadlines. And that's not really what I'm talking to, just because that isn't kind of music that I want to make, and I don't really ever have that goal to make that kind of music. Like I want to make it for what it is, and I don't want to be bound to someone else's agenda that interferes with what it's supposed to be. Obviously, I'm not getting any like label offers and anything like that, so maybe if they showed me some money, I might, sell out. No, I'm just kidding. I would not. At least I don't think I would. I don't know. I'd like to think I wouldn't sell out. No, I wouldn't, because I like doing this too much the way that I'm doing it. If I have to make money doing other things, then I'd rather do that, to where at least I have some artistic integrity in all of it. But I think even outside of that, I don't want the pressure to just make something and make something bad or something I'm not proud of. Because like I hate using the word bad, because there are people that would listen to my music now and think that it's bad. I think that's such a subjective thing, but I don't know. The other thing is you might be further along with your idea than you realize, and you might write a part or work through the remainder of the song, and then you don't like it, but then you go back to it after not listening to it for some time, then you really like it. Or there's songs that you really like that you thought you were done with, and then you go back to, and then you don't like it. So it's just such a weird thing that there's no really rhyme or reason to it. And I think it just adds to the difficulty of finishing something. But I don't know. I think at the end of the day, if you don't have your pressure on it, finishing does get as easy as starting it, because then you don't feel like it has to be done today or it has to be done tomorrow or next week or even in a year. By relieving yourself of those burdens, I think you can finish it, knowing that you're eventually going to finish it and you're going to go back to it. And if the idea gets scrapped, the idea gets scrapped. But I think that's just something that you as an artist will know, and you have that internal gut feeling, if you will, that is kind of telling you what to do, and you'll know. So at least that's how I feel about it. So anyways, that's my 2 cents on why I think starting music is so much easier than actually finishing the music. But again, I think that there is a lot more ambiguity in it, and it doesn't have to be done when you think it has to be done, and just kind of enjoying the ride and letting your creative mind work while you're not working on it. So anyways, if you're into music, making music, listening to music, talking about creativity, the creative process, all those things, gladly appreciate if you subscribe, like, and just jumped along for the journey. Also listen to Silence or Solitude, my latest album. That's instrumentals, hip hop beats with guitar playing over it. I would greatly appreciate it.